17 men and one woman belonging to a sex grooming gang have been prosecuted in the United Kingdom. Now, this is after years of committing child rape and trafficking. The gang lured underage girls with drugs and alcohol. Police say that almost 500 people were arrested after 278 victims testified. All but one of the convicted gang members was of Asian origin. One British MP, Sarah Champion from the Labour Party, has claimed that people are afraid to acknowledge the racial aspect of the story because she says they're worried about being deemed as racist. To discuss this now, I am joined by Tony Bugle. She's the founder and leader of Mothers Against Radical Islam and Sharia, and also by Salman Butt, who's the chief editor of the website Islam21c.com. Welcome to you both. I'd like to come to you first, Salman. Now, the majority of the perpetrators in this case, and indeed in other cases that we've seen in the UK, were Asian men. Is it relevant to be making that observation?
An observation is, within the right of the law enforcement agencies. Everyone should make those observations. I think the problem occurs when we begin to ignore statistical significance. That way, for example, in the Rotherham scandal, it was a local newspaper that actually revealed that only 24% of the child sex exploitation suspects and perpetrators were Asian. So whilst I'm not trying to defend anyone from any reprehensible act, it's very important we approach this with a scientific method, taking into account statistical significance if we really do want to solve this huge social problem throughout Britain, instead of making politicised statements and trying to exploit this exploitation.
Tony, the interpretation of what Sarah Champion said is that she was making a link between ethnicity and the crimes committed. Was she right to make a connection like that?
There is a link, and the link actually, I'm offended at the fact that the term Asian is continuously used, because on a mass scale, and it may not be every single case, but on a mass scale, these men are Muslim, and that's the thing that people are afraid of saying. It isn't that people are afraid of saying the word Asian, they're afraid of saying the word Muslim. And it doesn't matter how many there aren't doing it, because obviously, look, we've got some fantastic Muslims in this country, but these men are Muslim on the whole. And this is what people are afraid to actually say, because they are terrified of the word racist and Islamophobe, fascist, Nazi, bigot.
But Tony, that was the case in this latest incident. Is there any evidence to suggest that that is an ongoing trend?
It's still an ongoing trend. Every time somebody tries to address, and the thing is, when
is there any evidence to back this up, though?
Well, I think that Sarah Champion has just backed this fact up, and she has said the same thing. The evidence is factual when every time somebody does mention the word Muslim, these are the terms screamed at them. And there is evidence to back up that there is a huge percentage. I think in the words of David Cameron, this is happening on an industrial scale. We've got to be what do you mean, what percentage?
What percent? You're saying it's a huge percentage which are perpetrated by Muslims. The actual CPS statistics say that between 80 and 90%. Well, between 80 and 90%, according to the child sexual exploitation lead of the CPS, between 80 and 90% of child sex exploitation perpetrators are white non-Muslims. I'm not saying,
yes,
I also
absolutely.
I also share your view that Muslims should be held to some kind of superior moral standard, because I happen to be a Muslim, and even one Muslim doing something reprehensible is one too many for me. But I think disproportionately focusing on Muslims
I would agree with
actually,
you on that.
But focusing disproportionately on when Muslims do it is doing nothing but allowing this deep problem with deep roots throughout the establishment to perpetuate further, and to claim that it's some kind of,
well, if I can interject just for a minute, because I will sit there and agree with. If I can interject just for a minute. You're right when you say that 80% of crimes committed that are paedophilia, rape, are white people. This is still a majority of a white country. But when you look that Muslims are, according to statistics, 5% of the population, and then look at the statistics of how many are carrying out these heinous acts against predominantly white girls, there's the racism. The racism is towards the white girls. Now, that percentage, do you not agree this is something that people that we should be actually addressing this together? And when you see 10,000 Muslims out over a drawing of Muhammad, of cartoon of Muhammad, but you don't see 10,000 out in the street screaming that this is enough, and that we must address this issue together, you can understand why non-Muslims are going, hold on a minute, there is a problem here, because if I open my mouth, I'm called a racist. So I would say that this is a factual thing. It is happening.
What's your response to that, Salman?
I'm sorry to say this, but that is a myth, to say that somebody who opens their mouth is claimed, is shouted down as a racist. This is in fact part of a new right-wing political correctness to try and divert attention away from systemic issues with the police, with the social services, with austerity-starved Britain and our public services, to try and hone in on a disproportionate, a proportionately represented, sadly, but proportionally represented minority engaging in certain crimes, the crimes of the rest of the population. It's a sad fact, but it's true. Now, if we want to actually tackle the problem in a scientific way, we have to see what is so different, what is particular about these particular gangs. You'll see, for example, if you're a fan of statistics, that the vast majority are involved. The majority are involved in the nighttime economy, in taxis, companies, in takeaways and off license, and so on and so forth. So if we want to actually hone in on the problem, we have to look at the causation, not just the correlation. Some of them happen to be of a particular background, racially or ethnically or religiously.
Okay, I see, Salman, that you're trying to differentiate there some of the characteristics of the victims. Go ahead, Tony.
The characteristics of the victims are predominantly white. Now, there was a time when Sikh girls were being targeted and the Sikhs came out violently. All I can say is I'm very thankful, very, very thankful that we haven't got, and this whole far right, I agree to a degree with what you said, Salman, by the way, about political correctness. Political correctness is literally the cancer of this country, and it's stopping this debate, it's stopping this conversation, and it's allowing these girls to go literally, yes it is stopping debate, because you say this isn't true, this doesn't happen. I've been dealing with this for a very long time. I support a lot of girls.
I'm saying let's look at statistics, let's look at facts.
But I'm saying we do get called racist.
I'm not trying to exploit this.
But I'm not a scientist.
I'm
not a scientist.
It seems, Salman, as though your
approach...
Salman, can I just check? It seems as though you are largely accepting the assertion made by Tony that there's a link between religion, between Islam, and a disproportionate number of these offences being carried out by Muslims. Do you accept that point, then, in general?
No, it's not. First of all, when looking at a link between any two things, we have an incidental link or a correlation between two things. And then we have a causation, a link between two things which proves one causes or leads to another. For this particular case, we have neither of them. Asian people and Muslim people are not excessively outside of statistical significance, disproportionately represented when you look at the country as a whole. Now, in places where there's a lot of Asian/Muslims, I agree there's a lot of, likewise, people who from this background are committing certain crimes, and we have to address that. But trying to forge a mythical link between Islam or their brownness or Muslimness and these types of crimes is only diverting attention away from where it needs to go to actually solve this problem, which is an endemic problem.
I'm sorry, Salman, but you can't solve this with science, first of all. And I'm not a scientist, so blinding me with science is pointless anyway. I come at this from somebody who's a survivor of gang rape. I know what rape does to a person, and the support that I give these girls that have gone through being targeted by Muslim men who have passed them through, uncles, brothers, cousins. That, unfortunately, is a sad state of affairs. That does not mean that all Muslims do it. It does not mean that the Muslim community justifies it, but it does mean it is happening. So why can't we address that? And actually the whole far-right narrative of, you know, we don't get called racist. Yes, we do. I get called racist every time I mention that that is a statement of fact.
Tony,
it's not me trying to target.
Tony, Salman's making the point there that whilst they may be Muslims, that's not the reason behind why they are involved. What's your response to that?
I believe it is.
And what proof or evidence do you have to support that?
I don't. Right, it's not about evidence, but in my opinion, so we'll do it on an opinion. So in my opinion, I believe there could be a connection, and I believe the connection could be. And a lot of these young, especially the younger generation, are being radicalised. They are being taught that they are in a state of jihad with the West, therefore they can take that which their right hand possesses. And if that mentality is being instilled into them, there could possibly be a connection. But I think the bigger connection is that they are being told that white girls are trash, white girls are whores, white girls are slags, and you can do whatever you want to a white girl. And that mentality is coming from somewhere, and it's not coming from me.
And herein lies the importance to distinguish between a stereotype based on one person's opinion or one person's experience, however tragic and sad it may be, and statistical significance. If we don't actually look to the facts as they are, if we don't actually refer to experts, if we don't actually refer to people who can actually credibly fix this problem, then we'll just be chasing our tails and people calling each other racist or Islamist or radical or this or that.
Tony, is the biggest story here not that instead of talking about the racial background of the people who carried out these offences, is it not the fact that this is a huge scandal, this is happening at all, that this was so organised and it went on for so long in a country which prides itself on the fact that it's so civilised and such a democracy, and you would think it's unheard of that this could happen?
You would think it would be unheard of, but this has been happening for a very long time. And if you look at the percentage, Stevenage, Oxford, Telsley, Peterborough, literally 70+ towns where Muslim grooming gangs are operating almost as a business. And if we're going to look at the racial side of it, when you think that these men, these particular case, came from Iran, Iraq, Kurdistan, Turkish, there is only one similar connection. So unfortunately, the only race we should be talking about is the girls' race. They were white. Not one girl has ever had these cases recognised as being racially motivated. And it is racially motivated. That in itself is racism, but nobody wants to talk about that because that isn't the big story. Because unfortunately what we get is this whole, we need to leave the experts. Well, we left it to the experts. The police were supposed to be the experts, and they've been failing for years because of political correctness, because they feared the word racist and Islamophobe, and they feared it so much they abandoned these girls and they left them to get on with it. And that is the truth.
There is absolutely no evidence to suggest that.
Guys, we've got about 1 minute left. I want to give you 30 seconds each to make a final statement.
Yeah.
So first, Salman.
To suggest that the police left these girls to be raped because they were afraid of being called racist is preposterous. It's literally, it's unbelievable.
It's true.
It's against all of the evidence that we have. It's based on a statement from the J report taken out of context, saying that senior council leaders were saying not to overplay the ethnic dimension because it was a minority of people who were of that ethnic background in the first place, and we've seen what chaos that has led to.
Okay, Tony, you get 30 seconds to respond to that and wrap things up.
Well, rather than respond, I will make a statement which I know is factual. I have been doing some in-depth research. I'm not going to go into who for, but I've done some in-depth research. We've spoken to in excess of over 200 ex and serving police officers who have all turned around and said they have all been afraid to address the issue because of political correctness and fear of being called a racist and an Islamophobe, and that is a fact. OK, I have to wrap you up there, guys. Thanks for joining us, though, for this discussion on RT. Tony Bugle, their founder and leader of Mothers Against Radical Islam and Sharia, and Salman Butt, chief editor of the website Islam21c.com. Thank you both.